Hey guys, it's Spring Benson here. Welcome back to the Real Estate Real Life podcast. Today's guest is Louie Hamner. He's CEO of Vanguard Title. Vanguard Title is a title company in Utah. They close over 10,000 transactions a year. But the really cool thing about Louie is he gets his business by adding value to real estate agents' life. So I'm really excited to talk to him today, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey friends, Spring Benson here, and I'm stoked to have you join us on Real Estate Real Life. Success in real estate and life is 80% mindset and 20% strategy. This podcast goes deep into the mind of top real estate entrepreneurs, CEOs, and mindset coaches across the country who are downright dominating their space and thriving in their lives and business. Tune in each week to learn how the best in the business are building systems that work for them and creating incredible opportunity and freedom in both their lives and businesses. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Real Estate Real Life podcast. I am super excited about today's guest. It's Mr. Louie Hamner. Louie is one of my dearest friends. I just think the world of him. And he came into my life probably, how long ago now? Like 4 or 5 years ago?
Something like that,
yeah. It's a really cool story. So Louie owns one of the largest title companies in Utah. And he was trying to get my business at the time. I think we'd met at a Tony Robbins event just in passing, but hadn't really had a conversation. And Louie said to me, he said, "Hey, Spring, we're in title. We can't offer you anything. It's just because of RESPA guidelines and everything." He said, "But what I can offer you is I can help you grow." And I was like, that is a very interesting value proposition, because I've never had anybody say, "Hey, like it's title, but let's do business because I can help you grow as a," and what you meant by that was as a human. And so I said, all right, let's do it. And ever since, like, one of the highlights of my week or month, sometimes we go longer in the week, is chatting with you. So of course I was like, "Hey Louie, will you be on my podcast?" So I thank you for taking this time to chat with us.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So Louie owns Vanguard Title. Vanguard Title is, like I said, one of the largest title companies in Utah. One of the cool things about Louie is I think one of the ways that you guys have become one of the largest title companies in the state is exactly what I just mentioned, is that you bring massive value to a lot of people's lives, and they want to be in business with you, and they want you to be a part of their life. And you I think you're a lot of people's person that they call or ask for advice or whatnot. And so maybe even just touch on that before we get into today's podcast. I mean, I think that's a good segue of what made you realize like real estate professionals needed that? I guess anybody does. And what made that shift to like, hey, that's who I'm going to be to grow my business?
You know what? That's a great question. And I don't know if I've had anybody ever ask me that.
I guess I should have prepped you. Just kidding.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's really good. So two things come to mind. When I got into the title insurance business, it was hard. It's similar to being a real estate agent. You're out marketing and, trying to get business, and you're selling people on who you are and all this stuff. And I think during that time, I would seek out individuals to help me to do what I was doing, because it was hard. I hated talking to new people. And in fact, when I got this job, my wife was, then said, "You hate sales. What are you doing in a job? Like, you quit the last 2 sales jobs you got because you hated it." And I'm like, I'm desperate. And so I stayed in the business. And so, but I remember one day I was sitting at my desk and I had a list of real estate agents that I was calling, and I hated it. And I was just nervous. I hated it because I felt insecure, weak. It's not that I hated talking to, real estate agents. It's just that making those phone calls, the emotions that I brought up in me, and my palms being sweaty, and thinking and rehearsing in my mind what I'm going to say, and thinking that sounds stupid. I hate the sound of my own voice, all of this stuff. Anyway, so I sat there and I was doing that one day, and I had a marketer, Sue, and she came in and she gave me a sticky note and had a agent's name on it. And she says, "This guy likes you. I told him you were awesome, and call him. He wants to talk to you. He's not sure he's going to send his business or not, but call him." And what I realized is in that moment, that phone call was easy to make. And I had a list of 20 names that I did not want to call. And then I thought in my mind, I'm like, what's the difference between this one guy and these 20 people? And I'm like, this guy thinks I know stuff. Like this guy he thinks I can really help him. So immediately I made the phone call, talked to him, set up an appointment, and then I think it's probably either later that day or the next day, same pad of paper that I had, I flipped the page over and I wrote at the top of the page, and I still have the pad of paper somewhere because I kept it, but I wrote at the top of the page, who would I have to become so that real estate agents wanted to call me to talk to me for help?
That's a powerful question. But that's, I think, I know that's how you've grown. And I think that you being that person that people want to talk to is I call you the other day, we went to lunch and you're like, you just wanted to go to lunch with me? I'm like, yeah, I didn't need anything. Like, this isn't business related,
Yeah.
But that's who you've become for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So that journey of who you had to become, maybe talk about that. Because I think really quickly to hit on this, I think that is the number one thing. Who do you need to become that somebody wants to buy a house from you? Who do you need to become to attract that spouse? If you're single, who do you need to become to create whatever you're wanting in life? So what was your journey? Like, what was your aha for that?
Well, so right after I wrote that question, names immediately came to my mind, and I thought, well, who do they already go to? And so I put down Mike Ferry, Tony Robbins, Brian Buffini, and I just started listing all of these names that if I was one of these people, they would want to come to me already. So then I just kind of looked at it and just thought, who do I most align with, or what is it about them? Who do I want to go to? And then why do I want to go to this person? And so I realized that if I'm not willing to become somebody like, Mike Ferry or Tony Robbins or Brian Buffini or, a Darren Hardy, if I'm not willing to put in the work to become one of these, then I need to stop wishing that it could happen. So then I just kind of came to the conclusion that I wanted to do that because I hated marketing. I hated cold calling people. I'm like, I hate cold calling worse. I hate cold calling more than going out and reading and growing and developing myself. And so, and it's really interesting. It's like, once you decide something, right? I think it was Amelia Earhart who said, the hardest thing about life is making the decision. Like, that's it. Because once you make a decision, it's just tenacity and hard work. It's done. But the hardest thing is actually deciding to do it. And I love the etymology of words, and the word decide means, like, you have suicide, pesticide, but decide means to kill off all other options.
It's true. So once you make that decision, and what? Because you made the decision, but I made
the decision, but right after that, then a friend said, "Hey, I'm going to Tony Robbins. Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" I wrote his name down. It was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. I'm like, "Yeah, when are you going?" Because I'm scared to go by myself. I don't know what I'm getting into. And so he's like, "It'll be fine." What was funny about that? Because he goes, "I haven't been for a very long time, but he does swear a little bit, but not much. But you're going to be fine." And I'm like, he swears every word. Anyway, I'm like, you're totally wrong. He doesn't swear a little bit. He effing swears every effing word. It's like, that's Tony Robbins.
For those
anyway,
For those of you who have not been to a Tony Robbins event, you've just listened to him on audio, and in an event, he swears every other word.
But so it was interesting is that like, so that began that journey, you know, and quite honestly, I felt like my values were like, I don't, you know, swear like he swears, you know, and stuff like that. But anyway, I got there and literally it was like 2 months later, it was like 6 weeks later, I'd signed up and just going. And I went there and in the first hour, my mind was blown away.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me about, probably took me about 2 or 3 hours to realize he was cussing because my mind was just blown. I'm just like, this is like, I have learned more in 3 hours than I have in 10 years. What has happened?
Yeah.
And I realized like, so that was it, you know, that to me, that was, and it felt good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great, you know, it was a great 3 day or whatever, 3 or 4 day event, but that like, that's where it started. And then, you know, then all the stuff that he teaches in that, you know, educate yourself, read, you know, work on yourself and all of these things that it really just gave me a foundation of how to do what I decided I wanted to become, you know, just like two months prior.
So this is interesting to me because I know your story, right? But I mean, you didn't start out having this huge title company. In fact, you started out failing, and I think people fired you, right?
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you ended up in the down economy, just being like, I have no other choice. Like if I recall, and maybe you hit on this for a second, like, I mean, it got to the point that your family was on welfare, right?
Yeah.
And you were like, okay, well, you decided, and you can tell your story, but this is super powerful because I think that one of the things that happens is like in these conversations or interviews, or you see these people who are thriving in life, it doesn't mean they've always been here. Like there's processes and things that have happened that have got you here, but it wasn't handed to you on a silver platter, right?
No, yeah,
so maybe hit on that for a second. And then I want to ask you really about agents, because you're with them all the time, right? So what sets somebody up for failure or somebody up for success? But tell the audience a little bit about your journey of how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. So I was actually working at Fidelity Investments, and I got fired from Fidelity.
Yeah.
I went to, can you see? I went to.
Your camera just turned off.
Yeah, it just turned off. Let's see here.
It's a cute picture of you though.
That's great. Okay. So, so I got fired. So then I found a job in title and was in that for a few months, 6 months exactly, or 7 months. And the owner of the title company pulled me in and said, you know, we thought you were going to be a rock star in this business. Because I knew nothing of title. They hired me and kind of trained me. And then 7 months later, I get fired again. He says, you're just not going to make it in this business. And I went home and told my wife, and she thought I was lying and teasing her. She was like, you don't get fired twice in 7 months. You work hard. This is impossible. And I started crying. Like, okay. Anyway, so we were on welfare. I stayed in title. I had a client that kept me in there, and I just kept on working at it and realized that I you know, it's kind of like sink or swim. You got to either I'm going to make this or I'm not. And I just kind of decided that I have to make this work. Like I have to do this. And it was awful because I hated marketing and talking to people. And not that I hated talking to people. I was just nervous, so scared. I didn't know how to do it. And so I just persevered through that and finally started getting traction because I just kept doing it over and over. And then it just, I realized that at some point, you know, 2 years into this business, I was making more money than I ever made in my life. I was making, you know, $50,000 or $45,000 at Fidelity. And my third year in this business, I was making 150,000.
Yeah.
I'm like, how, like, this is crazy. And so I just kept moving forward in that because it was, I found so much fulfillment and joy in it, you know, although it was stressful and like awful, but I didn't want to go back and be on welfare. And I'm like, kind of like back in those two decisions. Do I want to be on welfare, or do I want to control my destiny? And I just kept thinking, nobody can fire me now because I'm independent. Like, I can do this. I have my own plan. Nobody's ever going to fire me again. Nobody. And
Yeah.
that just is kind of my driving force, of making that happen.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that was it, that that is what made me want to create a company and to help other people, because the pain and the not having someone to mentor me in doing this, um, I wanted to start this company so that I could help other people along the same path that I just walked,
Hmm.
and tell them where to step and say, do this, do that. And I can help you get to where you want if you just listen to me, listen and do what I did, because it's simple. It's hard to be, I think it's Jim Rohn that says it's easy. The easiest things are the hardest things to do.
Right. Well, real estate is just that, right? It's really being
Yeah.
disciplined. It's not rocket science, but most of us don't have that discipline or the perseverance or the why to keep on going, right? If it was
Yeah.
easy, everybody would be in real estate and we'd all be making $1 million. It's
That's
not
right.
like anything
That's
worth
right.
having is not easy. And so I think that that's where the biggest part of your journey is. You're like, I just kept on trying. Because what was the worst case scenario? Like, you were already on welfare, right? So you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
well, I have nothing to lose. I've got to figure
That's
this
right.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's fast forward. So you're now in like every single major franchise, even large offices. Everybody has you in either weekly in their
Yeah.
sales meeting, or like the large teams like myself, I have you in. So I mean, you were like everybody's go-to person, maybe not
Yeah.
everybody, but 90% of everybody's go-to person to really deliver a powerful message on a monthly or weekly basis. That's not like a typical how-to, because you don't teach the how-to of real estate, meaning how to get a FSBO or expired. You teach a lot
Yeah.
of the mindset components and what's holding people back. So what would you say is the number one thing right now that you see that holds an agent back from really succeeding?
Complacency, number
Okay.
one. Like, it's interesting. I recently, I can't remember who it was I was talking about. He used the word mindset, and then he said, we often talk about this, but we forget that we have a heart set. And real estate agents will have a mindset, but their heart set is not as horrible. Like, and that's really what keeps them from succeeding, is because it's the different. I was watching the movie 12 Strong, and I can't remember the names, but the Afghan tribal leader has teamed up with a Navy SEAL team, and these guys have rudimentary weaponry, and this Navy SEAL team has these state of the art stuff, and he says, and this Afghan tribal leader says, my men can beat your men. He says, my men are warriors, your men are soldiers. And warriors fight from the heart, and soldiers fight from the mind. And my men will always beat your men, no matter how much training they have. And it's interesting. Peter Drucker says this, or um, uh, yeah, Peter Drucker says the same thing, right? He says, culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. Culture beats strategy every day of the week. It eats it for lunch every day. But what culture is really like your heart, like why you're doing what you're doing, how
Mm-hmm.
you do it, and the meaning you put behind what you do. That's culture, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
so most agents, what I've seen where they struggle is that because the market's good in this moment, it's easier to get deals, and so they don't have to put forth their best effort every day, and so they're not used to putting forth the best effort, and so they slowly start to deteriorate that why, that purpose, that emotional connection to what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's just easy. I can make a couple phone calls and do that. Then I can disengage and go do whatever I want. And that disengagement is what leads to, right, to the downfall in the end, is that when the second the market shifts, because their heart set is not good, they fail.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think we all know what to do. I mean, there's
Yeah.
1,000 podcasts, there's tons of webinars. You can go to YouTube University if you're with a major franchise. I mean, we all know exactly what to do to sell a house. But just like you said, it's up here. You have to have that why or that want or heart set to do it. And it is interesting because when the market does shift, those people that have that massive why and really have owned it will be the ones that survive. And then the ones that have to come back and be like, wait a minute, I was kind of floating by. This was easy. Like I didn't have to really, are the ones that are going to have a really hard time with it. Right.
Yeah.
There's an industry shift happening too. So the market shifting and an industry shift, I really genuinely feel like we're going to see a massive disruption. We already are, but we're going to see it really play out in the next 2 to 3 years in real estate. And so with that being said, now is the time that you really have to understand, why are you doing this?
That's right.
If you're doing it because it's easy and it's like, it's my income and you're not really loving it, then it's probably not the right career for you long term.
Yeah. So I just realized this as you were talking about this. If someone asked me, what's the number one question most agents ask you, well, then they ask me, and it's this: how are you always so passionate about what you're doing? Like, that's the question. Why are you so passionate? How come, like, every time I see you, you can talk about something or deliver a message or to do, like, how are you able to do that?
Yeah.
It's because the journey feels as good as achieving the goal.
Yeah. Well, it's because you love it, right?
Yeah, because I love the whole process.
So that's the thing. If you as an agent aren't enjoying the process, it's not going to get any better. Like somewhere you've got to connect with, this is fun, whether it is fun that you're helping families, whether you're in a cool culture environment, whether it's fun that you're growing as a human, some part of it has to be like, this is awesome. So you're in, like I said, you're in a lot of offices. So they ask you the question, what else, like, what would you say is the, you see a lot of people probably go on this roller coaster, right? The ups and downs. What do you see like is the number one thing, and what can an agent do to really avoid that roller coaster? Because I look at it, like I'll look at my team's numbers and I'm like, man, if they would just be consistent and show up like they showed up last month, they make double the money. But it's almost like they make all this money and then they don't make any. And then they make all this money and then they don't make any. And I think you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit, of maybe they don't believe that they should, or maybe it's a comfort level, but maybe hit on that, because I think you see it a lot and a lot of agents talk to you about it.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to go back to a little bit of they agents will say, I had a great day because I had 3 closings today or 2 closings.
Right.
That should not determine like who they're becoming is what makes it a great day. By showing up, what we don't realize is, you can't, in basketball, you can't call for the ball with 2 seconds to go. If you're not showing up to practice every day, you won't have the confidence to call for the ball. Like, give it to me, give me, I want to take the last shot. And I think what everybody wants is to be able to hit a last second shot, but no one wants to put the work in, and they have to put meaning to their work. And they have to really believe and be intentional and saying, you know what, by showing up every day and doing this every day, it's going to change me over time. Just like going to the gym. You can't go to the gym, 3 times a month and then expect to have great results, and then not go the next month, and then go 3 times the next month. Like that's never going to work. But we don't look at it because they don't love what they're doing. They're not enjoying the journey. They're trying to stay away from it as much as they can. you know.
Interesting.
So they have to, that's part of it, is like you have to enjoy that process, you know. Does
So
that
I
make
don't
sense?
think,
So
oh, it totally makes sense.
yeah, it's just like that's, and so part of that is really like, you know, like I love talking to you. You know, going, when you say go to lunch, I'm like, I don't even know what we're talking about, but I'll go because we always talk about something awesome. Like I feel energized by it. So sometimes they don't show up because they're not being, you know, I don't know, they're not being energized by it, or they don't care, or they don't understand the meaning of not showing up. Sometimes it's just, they don't understand the meaning of if you just show up every day, that is enough. That's changing you, you know.
Hmm.
You don't have to show up to do something important. You just got to show up to do the workout, you know, to do the you know, the drills, you know, the fundamentals of your business.
Well, and just like you had mentioned, I think that the market has breeded a little bit, or bred a little bit of mediocrity, in the sense that it's been
Yeah,
easy. It's been easy to sell. You know, there's a lot of new agents who've gotten in and they've gotten into production quickly.
yeah,
And so it's been easy. And I just don't think that fundamental part of, if you did these things, you could be to this level, as much as you even articulate it. I think another thing is, especially in my world, that this roller coaster happens because they make more money than they've ever made in a month or
yeah,
two. And then it's like, well, this is great. And then all of a sudden they go spend a little bit, or it hits. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't have a closing next month, which means I don't have a paycheck. I need to get back to work. So
right. That's why yeah,
yeah, and I was gonna say, so I think the thing about it is they haven't tied, for, at least in my world, they haven't tied that like thought process along. If I did this consistently, it would actually give me, instead of 120 grand, 240. Wow, what would $240,000 do for me? It's not. They haven't. They've never made 120 grand, so they never made.
yeah.
So that 240 doesn't, like, it doesn't
Yeah.
comprehend.
Yeah, well, I mean, professional athletes have the same problem, right? Like Mike Tyson a year ago was worth $1 million, and at some point he was worth like, I don't know, 300 million. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how are you? Like, what happened to you? Where's all your money? Like, same thing. It's in real estate. It's a, you know, everywhere. We become complacent and live up to what we, you know, what makes us comfortable, and then we allow ourselves to fall back because we don't have a clear mental image of what we actually want to accomplish. We're just trying to stay out of pain, you know.
So
And
you,
so
no, keep on going. Sorry.
no, I would say by having some type of image of, when I hit this, then I'm going to do that, and then when I hit this, then I'm going to go do that. So it's not, when I hit this, then I can stop working, because
Mm-hmm.
literally that is what they're saying in their mind. When I make this amount of money, I can quit working.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I,
Yep.
so but you just can't do that. You got to have a plan. You got to be intentional.
So you talk about that you wrote down and said, who do I need to become in order to make this happen? And so tell me a little bit about that journey of how you've become, because you didn't start this way. So you
No,
made that decision, and then what's
yeah,
been your journey and your discipline? Because one of the things about you is, like, if you've noticed on this podcast, you were quoting, you're spitting out quality content. I thought about this last
yeah,
time I talked to you. I'm like, how in the heck does he remember all of this stuff? Like,
yeah.
of just like Jim Rohn said, or whatever. And I'm just like, how does he remember that? So tell us a little bit of what steps you went through of creating a personal growth plan.
Yeah. You know, one, I went to that first Tony Robbins event. Then I realized that those types of uh, events or opportunities really empower me. Like they fuel me. They feed my soul. They feed my mind and my soul of what I actually, you know, my dreams, what I'm holding in. I'm like, what I want to become. When I'm there, I realize they help me to, you know, have a mental image of what that path looks like to get there. So the first thing I realized is, once I went, I thought, I have to go to these every year. Like, I have to go to this a couple of times. This, you know, so it was that commitment of doing that was the first thing. And then The second thing was I realized at the time I was driving a lot. I would do a lot of outside closings because the refinance boom hit in 2010 when, and so I listened to audio. I would listen to, I'd buy sales tape or sales CD, and I would just listen to those things over and over and over. And I would drive home, and sometimes I get sick of it. But then I would kind of made a rule that on the way to work, I would listen to my book or whatever the audio was, and then on the way home, I could listen to music. But on the way to work, I have 1 hour to drive. 40 or whatever, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I would drive, I would have to listen to that book. And then during work, I would have to listen to that book. But on the way home, I could listen to whatever I wanted. And I listened to a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
And really some of it just over and over and over. And because I realized it has to deal with, I didn't understand it at the time, but I realized that looking back, I realized you have to reprogram yourself. You have to constantly be putting that stuff in you. Otherwise, it just goes in and out, in and out, in and out. And if something's, eventually it's going to start sticking. And it's funny that you said that because you said something like that. We were talking about, how did I know all that stuff? That sounded really good. I'm like, I've listened to that stuff for so long. Like, how can you not,
Yeah. Well,
It's
you're like a knowledge bomb, right? Every time I talk to you, I'm like, oh man, he just kind of put that in perspective. But I always think that, and like, cause you'll pause. This is a Louie. He pauses and he thinks for like 5 seconds and then you'll start talking, that's how you work. But you
yeah,
process and you're like, go into my knowledge bank. Okay, here you go,
yeah, yeah.
But okay, so you listen to audiobooks every time you drove, and then is there anything else?
Really just trying to apply what I learned. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I would listen to, I remember listening to a Brian Tracy sales, it was called, I can't remember the name of it, but sales book or something, and I was listening to it. And then, so what I would do is whatever he said on the way to work, I thought, I'm going to try to do that today. So no matter what part of the call it was, when he was talking about sales, if he said complimenting people, and I thought, okay, today I'm going to compliment people all day. Like, that is the one thing I am going to do. I might screw everything else up, but I'm going to compliment people. And so it was really, because like that's what kids do. And kids learn by doing. They hear it and then they mimic it. They watch their parents say stuff and do stuff, and then they just mimic it. And that's how they learn. That's how we learn, is by matching and mirroring and mimicking what we see around us. That's why, who you hang around is so important, because you start matching and mirroring the people that you hang around.
It's true.
It starts coming into you. So to me, it was about trying to do whatever I actually heard, as opposed to listening to it and just, recording it intellectually, So
Yeah.
it was that was, one of the things. And the other thing is, on my iPhone, you have your notes section. So anytime I hear a quote that I love, I put it in that notes section. So these are just the ones that are like, bam, I'll copy, paste, and I put it in there, and I just type in quotes, and then, I don't know, 200 of my favorite quotes just come up, and then I always go to those, and often, like, I might be, if I have 10 minutes sitting somewhere, I'll just read through those quotes again, because I know those things inspired me at some time at a super high level. It's kind of like reading your journal again. I go through it and read those quotes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember exactly when I learned this. It was so hard. Like, I needed that. And then so it becomes more emotional to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what would you say to a real estate professional right now? Like, somebody who's wanting to take their business to the next level, what word of advice would you give them?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of what I would really say if they were trying to get the business to the next level. I would say, become more present of what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, and allow that, those emotions you know, if you're anxious in a day, like this is, I realized like, this is what I would do. Like if I was anxious today, I would think, why am I anxious? And then I would think, well, because I don't know if so-and-so is doing their job like they need to. Why don't I know that? I don't know that because I'm not good at following up with them. Oh my gosh, I have to work on following up. I'm anxious. I don't even
So,
realize that that was driving me. Does that
so,
make sense? Like,
so if you figuring out like what it is that's making you anxious is what you're saying. So you as Louie, I feel anxious today. Well, why? Well, I'm not quite sure if so-and-so, well, why do you not? Yeah, I get what you're saying. So why do you not know that? Because you haven't done it. So you need to work on you, right? It
yeah,
really comes down, I would probably agree with you.
just self-reflection, like
Yeah, it's a
being aware of that.
I think it's a self-reflection of how you're feeling and why do you want something. Like I just think
Yeah,
like a lot of times we don't let ourselves visualize the future. If you don't have a
yeah,
big enough why, or you're not in a big enough surroundings, that, like I mentioned about the new agents, that they can't visualize or know what that extra income will do for them, or going to that next level, what it is. I don't think a lot of times it's about the extra income. I think it's
mm,
about the journey and that, and getting to that next step. And it's the process that you're going to get to that next step. I always look at them like, I don't per se need any more money. Do I want more money? Yes. But what do I want more money for? Well, I want it to create growth opportunities for myself and the people that I love. Right.
mhm.
So for me, that's my thing of like, I go to this next level. It's not that I'm like, hey, I'm going to go write myself a big check. It's like, cool, I can help other people get to where they want to go. Like
Yeah,
that's what pushes me.
right.
I think for somebody in their career, they've got to figure out why they want it. Because if you don't have a big
Hmm.
enough, like you call it that heart center or whatnot,
Heart set. Yeah.
yeah, you're not gonna. It's just not gonna happen.
Mhm.
I think too is this was an interesting conversation. And this is totally off base, but not off base, but off what we were talking about. But you and I went to lunch last week, and you told me the story about your neighbor. Do you mind sharing it? Because I was like, oh my gosh, like that is such a great perspective about him thinking about doing a for sale by owner, and the
Oh yeah.
answer that you're like, what are you
Oh
talking
yeah.
about?
Yeah. Yeah.
The answer you gave him though, I thought, man, if every real estate agent would say that, hey,
Yeah.
well, if you're, and you can give them what you said. I was like, that is the best response. I mean, we as agents, we usually hit it with like, well, I've sold XYZ homes and I can get you top dollar and da 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 da. And I think that from this conversation, what I take away is you win and influence people by relationships
Yeah.
and by and being vulnerable and authentic and real and having real conversations with them about having their best interests and stuff. And so I feel like we as real estate professionals probably need to approach things more in that direction, right?
Right.
You come off as a human connection, then
Yeah.
you're gonna have way more opportunities than you do now. But tell that story, because I was like, that is golden. Louie should be a real estate agent.
Okay. Yeah. So if I messed it up, I can't. I remember mostly what I said, but so I was out for a run, and my neighbor stops me and he says, "Hey, I'm selling my home for sale by owner." And I said, "So why are you doing that?" And he says, "I don't want to pay the real estate commission." I said, "Oh man, I totally agree. Like that is, how much would they, how much did they want?" And it was like 20 some $1,000 or something. And I said, "Yeah, that sucks. That's hard. That's a lot of money to pay. I totally get that." And I said, and he says, "Any advice on how to do this?" And I said, "Well, yeah, what?" I said, "What are you nervous about? Like, um, when they go to do the transaction, what's going to be hard for you in writing the contract?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, I don't really know what the house is appraised for." I said, "So that's going to be hard. And then he started, and I said, when you're negotiating with the real estate agent, because they're going to negotiate with you, they're like attorneys, they're going to be asking you, all sorts of things about the home. I said, what are you going to be worried about? Like, what are you going to do? Is that going to bother you? Is that going to stress you out? And he goes, yeah, that seems really stressful to negotiate that. I said, that's right. They're going to ask you to come down on the price of this or to fix this or to fix that. I said, when they walk through your house and start pointing out everything that's wrong with it, that it gets emotional because you get pissed. You're like, no, that does not need to be fixed. We lived with that for 20 years and I'm not fixing that. And he goes, that's so true. And he goes, that's just scary. I said, let me ask you this. Do you think you're going to lose sleep? Are you going to be worried about not selling your house and all this stuff? He goes, I'm totally going to be worried about it if it doesn't sell on time. I just said, then you have to ask yourself, what is that worth it? Is $20,000 what they're asking, is that worth all of that stress and all of that? I said, because to me, on paper, I don't want to pay it. But when I look at all the stress and negotiating and then wondering if I checked the box right and someone's going to come back and sue me because I didn't disclose something like I should have disclosed it, and he's going to hold, I said, I don't want that. I said, it's almost like insurance. Like, I don't want to have to deal with that. I'll buy the stupid insurance. I hate it, but I'll buy it. And it was something like that. And then he goes, oh my gosh, I've never really thought of all that. That almost seems worth it. Like, I'm not going to lose sleep. I said, oh, that was the other thing. I said, do you think you're going to lose sleep in this process? He goes, totally. I said, I would too. I'd be freaking losing sleep all night. Wonder if I'm going to get, I said, so you have to ask yourself, if it's going to take you 4 months or 3 months to sell your house, are you in it for the long haul? Are you willing to lose sleep for 3 months to try to get this thing sold? Because I'm not. It's worth it. And he goes, man, that is a really good point. Okay, I'm going to try it for a week. And if it doesn't sell in a week, I'm out. I don't want to deal with all that,
Yeah. Well, I think my aha with me and you having this conversation was exactly what I said. It's an emotional, like it is money for sure. But at the end of the day, the consumer generally doesn't realize all that goes into it. So they just think they can do it themselves, right? And we've been in a market that breeds that as well. But they also don't realize all the emotional and the mental part that goes in, especially on the back end. Like, nobody ever realizes that there's so much of the back end stuff that we deal with that they don't see, So I love, I was just like, man, if agents would approach these things as more authentic and just say, okay, you want to go for sale by owner? Let's have a conversation. Are you prepared for this? And really at the end of the day, it's $20,000, but realistically, you're going to pay a buyer's agent commission, which is still 3%. So it's 10. So is that $10,000 worth this, and this? And if it is, great. But we just so much, I know, at least in my experience, hit on the numbers part and not the emotional component of it.
Oh yeah, that was the one thing he said. He goes, I have this really big project at work right now. And I said, oh my gosh, I go, this is going to stress you out. And he goes, man, if I am experiencing all this stress and I got to do this project, I'm not going to do good on the project. I go, I know. He goes, oh man, I got to rethink this. Okay, thank you. I'm so glad we talked. He was like, and he walked away. It was kind of funny, but that's true. I wasn't trying to sell him. I'm like, that's why I pay it too, because I don't want to deal with all that. It is not worth it to me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's what, there was a survey done by NAR, and the number one reason why people hire a real estate agent was to help them, walk them through the process. It was 48%. And then the rest of them was very small on finding a lender or helping them find a home. They're hiring you for that process part. So you understanding the process as a real estate agent is very important. And then also having that emotional connection. And I would say emotional intelligence, that you're not bringing your own emotions into the transaction, is why they're hiring you. So.
Yeah. But I think that's what agents kind of forget, is that they're hiring you so that you're going to take a bullet for them.
Yeah.
So when stuff gets crappy and all this stuff, and then the agent's upset, I'm like, hey, that's your job. You shouldn't
Yeah.
be upset. It's like a doctor being upset because there's blood everywhere. I'm like, you're a doctor. That's why I'm hiring you. I don't want to deal with the blood, like you should be happy there's problems. That's
Well,
why you're getting paid.
that's what I always say. We're a high paid problem solver. Like this is
Yeah.
what our job is. So when the agents bring their emotions into it, or, oh my gosh, it's like, dude, if it was easy and there weren't going to be any problems, we wouldn't have a freaking job. So your job is to mitigate the problems, not emotionally be involved, know that there's always going to be problems, let them know from the very beginning, hey, this is real estate and it's people. There will be emotions involved. I'm here to help mitigate that and to help you go through, make this a smooth process. But even just setting that parameters during your buyer listing consultations of, hey, it's real estate and people. There will be these issues. We're going to work through them as they go, and you not be that person that is the cog in the wheel. So
most definitely.
Very cool. So Louie, I don't want to take too much more of your time, but what would you say that that you're really seeing in the real estate space right now? Like, are you like you're in every office every week? Like you're talking to so many agents, and it seems like you're in some pretty high level conversations. Like, and it's interesting because one thing about you that I've noticed is you get people really thinking. You get some that are in tears. Like today, I think you had a sales meeting that you played a song and somebody was just crying. I mean, what are you really seeing, or advice you would give, or like, what's your perspective of everything right now? It's a loaded question.
Yeah, it is. So so two things. One, I'll take it from like a team lead perspective. I see a lot of team leaders who aren't sure how to feed their people.
You mean like lead or emotionally, or both?
Both. They don't really they don't know how to they don't know what to give their people to keep them because that's more than just mechanical of how to do the business, right? So they are, I mean, that's why when I talk to them, they'll say, oh my gosh, can you come talk to my team? Because that was so, like, I didn't know that they would need this. That's so good. And so they're not like, they're looking for things to feed their team and how to get them to do things. And they're not sure how to lead them. That makes sense? Like how to get the best out of them.
So I would say, I 100% agree with you. And this is interesting because I just had a mastermind and we talked about this, is it really comes down to us as leaders creating our own development plan, our own self-development, our own leadership, like our own leadership plan of how do I grow just like you did? How did you grow as a person to be able to lead the people around me and create that value? Because like you and I think you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but people don't leave companies. They leave people. They leave leadership, right? Like somebody who leaves my team is going to be leaving to still sell real estate 90% of the time. They just don't want to do it with us, right? So the reality of it is like we have to be growing in order to create that value for them, and that comes from having a growth plan, in my opinion.
Yeah, but the leader sometimes doesn't really have a strong plan themselves.
That's what I'm saying. We as leaders have to have our own growth plan. Like, how am I going to grow as a leader to help these guys grow within themselves, right? Like I came home from this mastermind and was like, okay, I literally wrote down in my book, I'm like, I've got to create a leadership growth plan of everything I'm going to do for the rest of the year so that I can grow to help these guys grow. Exactly how you said it. Okay, so from a team leader perspective, okay, from what other perspective?
So just what you said, like we said that, 85% of America is disengaged from their job. They don't find full purpose in it. And they don't find full purpose because they, one, aren't connected. They don't have meaning in what they do. And there's not this connection with the leader, because part of that leadership growth is being authentic and vulnerable with the employee. And so the leader, the employee can't come to the leader and say, hey, I'm just really struggling right now, and I really don't want to do this. And they're afraid to say what they really feel. And so now they disengage from what the day-to-day activities are, and then they just wither and die because they don't feel that vulnerability or that connection. You know, the team lead is struggling on what to teach them, but then and because he's struggling that, or he or she, and then they're afraid to address it with the team because they don't want to recognize with the team that they don't know what they're doing. So
Yeah.
their ego gets in the way. So I'll just give you this example. Is a couple of weeks ago, one of my escrow officers, Brooke, she is, you know, has 150 transactions a month. All three of her assistants were out in the same week. It was like a perfect storm. So I show up early on Tuesday morning to meet with her, and I said to her, and I said this to Brooke, and I said, Brooke, I'm really scared. I said, I'm really anxious and insecure in meeting with you this morning. And she goes, why? I said, because there's so much that you're going to have to do this week. And I don't have anybody, I don't have an assistant to give you to help you through the week. I feel like I haven't done my job because I can't support you like I want to. And if you're doing 150 deals a month and you have no assistance, I don't know what you're going to do. I'm nervous and I'm scared. And I was afraid to meet with you because I don't have an answer. Right now, I don't have an answer. And she got super quiet. Now I get emotional saying she got super quiet. She goes, I've already thought about that, and I kind of figured things out. And I said, what happened? And she says, well, for the last 2 years, you've been telling me to be vulnerable and to be more open with how I feel. So she goes, last night or the day before, I called all of my clients. I told them my situation. And then I asked them, what help? How can you help me? And she goes, you know what they all said? I go, what? She says, they all said, why don't we do all our closings after 6 p.m. so that all day you can work on the files all day long, so you're not in a closing, and then we'll all close from 6 to 10 p.m. So we want to help you. And she goes, me being vulnerable in this moment and contacting my clients, they all wanted to pitch in. They
That's
all
awesome.
wanted to. And she goes, and so, but that moment was scary for me to admit, like, I don't have a plan for you. I don't know what to do, you know?
Yeah.
And historically, I've had those where I just want to duck and run, and just not show up because I'm like, you know, I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you kind of feel. But when you're confident in that relationship with your people, and when you open up to them and share with them where you struggle too, they want to connect and they want to help you just as much as you need the help.
Yeah.
But that ego gets in the way and you know, prevents you from having that conversation of exposing your, you know, exposing your weaknesses or that vulnerability.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's so crazy though. Like people just connect. They just, I mean, I think we live in a society that it's like the Instagram or social perfect. And it's like, nothing is perfect. So when you're real and you're sincere and you're in these conversations and you're just like, hey, this is where it's at. What can you help me? People want to help you. They want to help you accomplish your goals. They want to help you accomplish getting the job done. They want to, you know, people want to help. And so I think it is 100% just being real and authentic. And that's really probably the key to it. So what advice would you give? So you have the team leader. What advice would you give a new agent?
Seek out whoever you're with, make sure they inspire you. Like that just hanging out with them in their presence that makes you want to do more.
Yeah. You know, that's the thing that I've really been thinking a lot about in the real estate space right now is a lot of the brokerages are created pretty equally. Like, I mean, if you work for a brokerage, they're all going to tout they've got this technology or they've got this training or whatever. But at the end of the day, a lot of the technology is very similar, and the training is very similar. It really comes down to the culture component and who's your leader, manager, broker. Like, who are you in business with? Do you connect with them? Is it somebody that inspires you and that you want to take your career to that next level? Because really, a lot of the deals, the splits, the structure, I mean, they're all a little different, but at the end of the day, very similar. So it's like, who do you want to be in business? Same with you, Louie. Like, honestly, like if you think about it, title is title. So for an escrow officer to be like, I want to work at Vanguard Title, it's because of the culture. Or if I want to work at wherever, whatever, it's because of that culture component. And so it really does come into like, which type of environment do you fit in the best? And there's not a right or wrong. It's just which one.
Yeah, it's finding what fits. And you know, I think if I was an agent and I was talking to a prospective buyer or seller, I say this as a title person, you know, I'll ask a real estate agent or a loan officer, I'll say, hey, question for you. Outside of just doing great title work, what's the value of your title company? What do they give you? And they just go, wait, what? Like what? I said, yeah, just outside of doing a great closing, you know, a great deal, the work, the fundamental title work, outside of doing that, how do they help you in your business? They never, there's nothing else they do. They always say, nothing, that's just all they do. And I'm like, if I were to inspire you and help you and cause you to want to grow, just like we talked about, but I think if I was a real estate agent, you could say that outside of just getting your house sold, outside of getting that done and making it lickety split, what would you want to see in a real estate agent?
Yeah.
What would you want to experience with me outside of that?
Well, I think if you ask those questions and then cater to their needs, it's going to you're going to understand what they're wanting from you, right? Well, I would really want some great communication, or I really want top dollar, or whatever it is. Like, besides getting your home sold, what is it that you would like to see from me to make this an amazing transaction? And that question right there is one that I think would set you up to have success, as long as you did it. You gotta be prepared that you're gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I feel like I've taken an hour of your time. I could talk to you all day. Is the problem? Like, you and I can go on forever. So, I just want to end this with, I hope you guys as listeners are listening and took away the nuggets of his personal growth journey, and really just making a decision as an agent, as a business professional, just really making that decision, as well as it's not, like he said, it's not mindset, it's heart set. Because we all know what we need to do. We all know what we need to do to lose weight. We all know what we need to do to sell real estate. We all know what we need to do to have a successful marriage. We all know what we need to do. We know it. And if you don't, you can Google it, you can YouTube University it, you can figure that out. But until you make that decision in your heart that that's something that you want, it's not going to happen. And that's just bottom line. And so I think just taking away even those little nuggets of like really being authentic and coming up with a plan and making those decisions is really going to set you apart. Because I just don't think, I would say the general population isn't. It sounds good, but it's not until they make that, like, boom, this is why. Yeah. Anything you want to end with, Mr. Louie?
No, that sounds great. That was great.
Okay, well, I thank you so much. You guys, if you're in Utah, check out Vanguard Title. I'll put the information below. Louie, you okay if I send out your contact info? You might get a little
Yeah, go ahead.
But if you guys are interested, if you're in Utah and you want to have Louie come to your office or whatever, hit him up. If he has time, I'm sure he'd be willing to come. You also do some CE classes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The
So,
cool thing about the CE classes is he did them on like crucial conversations and a couple of other ones that are super powerful. So they're not your typical sit through a CE class that's painful. So I'm going to put your info below. I'll also put it in the podcast. And then if any of you guys want to connect with Louie directly, you'll have his contact info. Cool. Okay. Thanks again. Okay. Chat with you soon. Bye, guys.